Hello. Our purpose today in this short video is to help you prepare for conferences with parents where you are going to talk about Iowa assessments. We also, as a side here, may be learning a little bit more about individual students that teachers can apply toward instruction in their classroom, but our main focus really is helping to prepare for conferences with parents. You'll need a couple things today. I suggest a couple highlighters, something like a blue or a green that would indicate go, the positive areas, the strengths, and something like a pink, an orange, or a yellow that might indicate some caution or some areas of need. You'll need a pen so you can write a couple notes. And then I have 3 reports here, but you'll actually be looking for 4. The first one, the profile narrative for an individual student. This is typically the report used at conferences, and often we use it alone at conferences, but we're going to add a little more information for some other reports. The second one is the performance profile, and the third and fourth are reading performance summaries and the mathematics performance summary. Since I am using reports that are samples coming from Iowa tests, I do not have access to a mathematics performance summary, but the information that we can glean from the reading one is in a very similar setup to math, so you'll be able to translate over to that without a problem. And you will also notice I have 3 different students here because those are the reports I have access to. We're sort of going to have to suspend our any problems we might have with that and we're going to assume these are all Aiden's reports. So even though we do see that these have different students' names on them, we are going to go forward with the idea that these are all for Aiden here. All right, kind of stack these up a little bit so we're focused on the first one. And again, you may have some good familiarity with this report. It's been pretty similar for some time, with the exception that we don't judge proficiency based on the national percentile ranking anymore. We are really going to look at the national standard score for that. So let's do that. In the little notes box here on your page, there's a national standard score given for reading. That means your student is proficient. In this case, 220. Mathematics, 217. Science is again 220. What you need to know about these is they are different for different grade levels. They're different for different subject tests, and they are also different given the time of the year that students test. And so 8th graders who test in fall have a different standard score than winter testers and spring testers. So you do always need to look at the notes here to make sure that it's right. And but if you are working with a whole class of 8th graders, you are going to see that if they tested at the same time, theirs will remain consistent. All right, then I suggest you take your highlighters and you look up above and you make a comparison for reading, math, and science to those scores, highlighting either in the pink or the blue. And let's see, reading, we have a 226, so we are proficient there, so I might highlight in that blue or green color. Mathematics, 237 as compared to the proficiency cut point of 217. And then our science is 226, so that is proficient as well. So we see that Aiden is proficient in reading, math, and science. So often, this is the depth of conversation we can get to in a conference based on what's held in this report alone. But we really want to give more information than that. We want to be able to talk about strengths and weaknesses. In this case, what I'd be able to say is, well, it appears as though vocabulary is the weakness here for Aiden, as that is the lowest standard score. But you know what? It doesn't really work that way. Those standard scores aren't necessarily comparable from one subject to the other. Another thing we can do to get the context of that standard score is to look at the national percentile ranking column. So again, you're probably very familiar with this column. This is where we've looked for a long time to judge proficiency, but we could look down here and say where are our students' strengths and weaknesses. And another thing I do suggest you do at conference is add a little context to that national standard score. For this 226 in reading, parents don't have a whole lot of context in that. They're going to naturally ask, is that good? Is that poor? Well, you know, tell me something more about that, is what they're really asking. The national percentile ranking can help with that. So the national percentile ranking at least lets parents know where does the student fall in continuum of all students in that grade. And so with this 45th percentile ranking, we see that this student is scoring better than 45% of peers, but not as well as 55% of peers. And we do also see the national grade equivalency. In Aiden's case, Aiden is actually a 7th grader in the 4th month of school, so at the time of the test taking, and so to be sort of right on grade level, we want to see a 7.4 in this national grade equivalency column. So there's another piece of context. Again, a reminder about those national grade equivalencies. We see Aiden's are not far off. There's some 8th grade 3rd month, 6th grade 1st months, but there are times when you'll see 13 plus on those. So you got to keep in mind that that's not indicating a student who could be in college. It's indicating that a student who is in college, who took the same test as your student, scored that well on that test. That's an often confused point. And sometimes people will make an argument for grade advancement based on that, and they're just not quite the same thing. Okay, let's get a little more information about this. Let's get into some depth about reading, math, and science. And so we'll put that report aside and we'll look at this performance profile. And again, we're assuming this is for Aiden. Right here, we see a lot of the same information in a slightly different looking table. We still have all of our subjects, our national standard score, our national percentile ranking, our grade equivalency, and a graph that shows exactly the same information, just slightly different looking bars. What we are really interested in this report lies across the bottom. So I suggest you kind of grab your pen here and you make it a little bit easier for yourself to read. So there's information about the reading test. Then I'm going to draw a horizontal line there because my next section is about written expression. And I'll draw a line, then there's conventions of writing to fill out the end of that column. Then if I move over here, I have mathematics. I have a computation test in mathematics. And then I have social studies. And then I have some science ending here and coming up to the top of the next column. Then I have information literacy, and then I have some college and career readiness stuff. So we'll kind of separate that and come back to that in a few minutes. So the way this information works is all the questions on the reading test are divided first by informational or literary passages. So all the questions are either based on more or less a fiction or a nonfiction passage. So then that information is indicated in these first two bars here as to where does the percent correct of this individual student lie in relation to the national percent correct. So we sort of see a ranking of that in these bars. What happens next is all those same test items are regrouped. And this time they're regrouped in domains according to what is the question asking about. Is it asking about vocabulary? Is it explicit meaning, implicit meaning, key ideas or author's craft? So all those questions are again regrouped, and then we see how is the student scoring on those compared to the national group. And finally, the last one is cognitive levels. All those questions again, what was the depth of thinking required for a correct answer on those questions? So here we see essential competencies, conceptual understanding, and extended reasoning, and we see where this student lies in relation to the national group again. So here's a lot more depth of information than what we had in the previous report. So here's a time that I would suggest you come back with your highlighters, and you're looking for particular strengths for your green or your blue, and what are weaknesses in that other color. So there are not hard and fast rules about exactly what you highlight and what you don't. You're just going to have to kind of think about this student and think about what makes sense. So for example, for Aiden here, I see some pretty good positives on both informational and literary passages. I'm not really worried about that at this time. When I go down to the domains, I see explicit meaning is the only one here that lies in the negative. So that tells me that this is something I want to talk with parents about. This is something I want to make a plan for in my classroom. This is something I want to address. So I'm going to highlight that. And I may highlight other things too. I may highlight in blue that vocabulary is very positive. Author's craft is very positive. So those are good things to mention to help the parent really understand a bigger picture of their student. So I'm not going to go over, my plan is to not go over this performance profile with parents at the conference, but I am going to come back to this profile narrative and make some notes. So I'll make myself a few notes in reading. And I would have made notes that I'd probably make them a little neater than what I'm going to do right now, but vocabulary and author's craft were very positive. But we need to work on the explicit meaning. We'll kind of come back around to a little bit more information on these, but that's the depth that I know right now. That I know that we've got some nice strengths in the data, and we also have a place for more growth. So I'd invite you to stop right now and actually look through student data and kind of mirror what we've done so far.